Ah! Greetings, Wanderer. This is Atlas here, and welcome to the Void. Today I'm going to be breaking down a song called The Only Thing They Fear Is You from the Doom Eternal original soundtrack. This is one of the coffee personal requests that I had scheduled for this month, and this one comes from Rune. So Rune, thank you very much for your request and of course your incredible support. The Rune of Doom. How about that? So I'm really looking forward to it. Onward. Alright. The only thing they fear is you. Boom. The low end sounds nasty. Follows the same premise as Doom 2016 so far. Oh! I think they're using 8-string guitars, but it's tuned down to like a half step. My god, this riff sounds so Doom 1, but with a modern take. So heavy. Pretty cool filter on that synthesizer. It could be also the guitar, but it's very processed. Although I would say it sounds more like a synthesizer. Very saturated synthesizer. Oh! Didn't drop right there. Gnarly. This is a great build-up. Ah! Great groove. A lot of space opened. It's building up again, naturally. You make those spaces, so yeah, to release the tension, but you build it again. Slowly. It's building it up, adding more layers and more layers. Ah! I can't stop headbanging. It's like, stop, please. The groove is just so good. Opening space again. This is the second time. Or the third time. These super saturated synthetic elements suit the song so well. So mean. Oh, listen to the hi-hat. Opening and closing. That's so cool. Nice, that transition there. With the... Oh, this is the choir, the... Oof. There it is, right? Yeah, there it is. Yeah, I do know what the choir is. Now let's break it down. Alright, so for this breakdown, I had to bring out the lean, mean machine, which is the electric guitar, obviously. This is a metal track all the way, so to do it justice, I have to play a very distorted, heavy electric guitar. But that aside, before I jump into doing some demonstrations with the guitar and whatnot, I just would like to talk very important things, because I am fairly acquainted with Doom as a game and as a franchise, and I think it's important to place some things in context before I can explain the following things with the demonstrations and whatnot. And I just want to do some sort of historical background in regards to the franchise, okay? Because this game, the first iterance of this game was released in the early 90s. The first Doom game from id Software. I think they came from doing Commander Keen and what's the other one? Wolfenstein, right? I think that was the case. And then they made Doom. And Doom was like something groundbreaking all the way. Doom is a groundbreaking game that deserves to be like in the Hall of Fame of video games, because it broke so much ground in many regards in terms of technical achievements and whatnot. But I know this is not about, obviously this is not the talk about that, but I just want to sort of place you in the you know, in the zeitgeist of what Doom is and means to gaming history in that regard, because I don't know if this is true or not, but Doom this is like a rumor, because I don't think I haven't checked if this is correct or not, but it is said that Doom was installed in more PCs than Windows at what point in history. So if that's true, take that into consideration. Like the game was installed in more machines than Windows itself. Obviously, this was a long time ago, like 30 plus years ago. So it makes sense that Windows was not the juggernaut that we know nowadays. It became to be so more towards the mid 90s. But coming back to the Doom premise, Doom 1 and Doom 2 had very unequivocally metal songs in their original soundtrack. However, they were composed and reproduced under a MIDI environment, meaning that there were not real instruments, real in the sense that the guitars and whatnot were emulated by the MIDI interface and not played by real guitarists and whatnot. So it has this very sort of 16-bit sound to it, because they were the composition was reproduced through that interface. But at the end of the day, they were metal songs. They were just reproduced, let's say, through other medium. And the thing is that I think this was more of an influence from John Romero, other than the other members of id Software at the time, to introduce that metal element in the premise of the game, which it fits completely around the world building and demons and Satanist symbols, pentagrams of demons and whatnot. And it worked very well. That's like the foundation of the Doom games, having the metal soundtrack and just blowing things with a bunch amount of weapons, a lot of gore and whatnot. That's what Doom is. That's the foundation, how it started, how it was born. That carry on into Doom 2, and in Doom 3 they took another path. They completely changed the essence of what Doom was. They took some risks. They went more towards a survival horror kind of thing. And I'm not entirely sure if they went through with a. I don't think they did a metal soundtrack for that particular entry in the franchise for Doom 3, because it was more of a survival horror, so it was more of an ambient, atmospheric sort of soundtrack. I think I might have to check that out later. I'm not entirely sure. But for what the foundation is of Doom, the Doom 1 and Doom 2, the metal is like there, So when they rebooted Doom in 2016 and they brought back the metal element, it was like home base, It was like it was not necessarily a return to its roots, because the metal that was popular back then, which was like Megadeth and Metallica, which are now more of they're still popular, but they are more like legacy bands now, you know what I mean? And Pantera and whatnot. It's not, 30 years of evolution in music, it's not going to be the same as it was in the early 90s, right? So what Mick Gordon did was that he took the effervescent scene of the second wave of progressive metal, or as is known, as many people know it as gent nowadays, which goes back, from the influence or of Meshuggah. It's probably the primordial band that inspired all these other bands into creating music in that style, or taking an inspiration in their style of music, using 8-string guitars or very low tuned guitars. He took that premise and applied it to the new entry of Doom, which was a very smart move, because obviously 2016 is not 1992 or 1993, or I can't remember which year was Doom released exactly, but it was in the early 90s. And obviously you have to, if you're going to introduce the metal element, you have to find ways to make it more exciting and more current, because Doom's 2016 certainly takes the very foundation and the essence in terms of the game design and the everything that has to do with the game, very inspired by what Doom was in the early 90s, the first entries, Doom 1 and Doom 2. But it's a modern take, and the whole game is a modern take. Then you need a soundtrack that actually conveys that at the same time. You know what I mean? So that's what Mick Gordon did in this track, when bringing the heavy guitars, more extended range guitars, which are super popular in the second wave of progressive metal, or gent as many people know it. With the 8-string guitar and bringing that super groovy headbang sort of style music. Now he wasn't able only to achieve that, but he also introduced other elements to give more identity to what the universe of Doom is. It wasn't just enough to bring metal in a very super heavy kind of way, inspired by this second generation of progressive metal and whatnot, and 8-string guitars, the resurgence, I don't think it's the resurgence, but it's like the widespread adoption of the 8-string guitar to make really heavy music and whatnot. It was not only that, he introduced also the layers of synthetic elements that we hear in the song, which is of course the synthesizers. I said that it could also be the guitar that it's heavily processed and sounds like a synthesizer, but I would be inclined to believe that it is an actual synthesizer that is just super slammed and super saturated, and that gives you the impression that it's an distorted electric guitar, just with a lot of effects and whatnot. But it's just I think for the most part it's just synthesizers that are heavily saturated with very interesting filtering done to it, as a sound design decision and whatnot, which are the ones that are actually playing like the melodies and the leitmotifs, if you will, in the song. And those synthetic elements, it's becomes like a full circle, because obviously Doom, it's set in a science fiction, in a dark sci-fi universe. You have the demon realm and whatnot, but you also have to consider that this was like an experiment where they opened a portal to hell in Mars and whatnot. That was the premise of the first game, and they took that same premise, I think, for the Doom 2016 game. I played it a long time ago, so I can't remember what, but I think it was fairly similar in that regard. So those synthetic elements obviously bring forward the storytelling of the game in terms of the setting, so of the setting where it takes place, right? Like this science fiction universe, but the metal is very much rooted in this forbidden art form from the early 90s, early 80s, where metal was a very despised genre of music, because it dealt within the into the more obscure and dark places of art and culture and whatnot. You had bands like Venom and Celtic Frost in the early 80s and whatnot, that dealt with actual satanic lyrics and whatnot, and that was very controversial at the time. And obviously, if you're going to be talking about Satanism and whatnot, and demons and whatnot, obviously that suits very well the premise of Doom. So it has a long it comes from a long way and a long history. That's why everything in this soundtrack makes sense. Okay, so now I am going to play the main riff and the main melody that we hear, and then I'm going to explain a couple of other things that actually pertain of why those were written in that form. Okay, so as you can hear, there's, super heavy, super groovy, massive riff right there. And, when you put the other layers of instrument together with that, it just sounds super massive, right? Now, there's a very interesting thing about this track, and it's also something that pertains to the nature of the 8-string guitar itself. I have a 7-string guitar, but through the magic of software and whatnot, I'm able to tune the guitar in within the range of the 8-string guitar by doing a transpose in the software. But anyways, coming back to the premise, the song has a lot of single note action in the sense that it's not playing power chords, which is, or at least I couldn't hear power chords play for the most part in the song, which is a quintessential element of metal music, but that also comes from I think for a very much a limitation of 8-string guitars, and it's that when you go into the 8-string territory, that's basically like the bass realm. That's those kind of lower notes are supposed to be played by the bass player or the bass guitar, because that's the realm where that instrument, the range of that instrument is. That belongs to the bass players, let's say. But that changed when 8-string guitars came in. So it would be very hard or very sporadically, like incredibly sporadically, that you will hear bass players, doing chords or power chords or whatnot in their instrument, because the low range of their instrument makes the chords sound very moody and very unintelligible, to a certain degree cacophonic. So if I were to make a power chord here, which is basically an interval, it's just 2 notes. It's not like the biggest supermassive. It's not like a big supermassive chord or whatnot. It's just 2 notes. Listen to how it sounds. It sounds like crap, right? And I think it has to do with that same premise. Like, I mean, if I had an 8-string guitar, I didn't have to transpose the instrument. I think it would sound very much more clearer. And also, these strings are a little bit old. That is a factor that contributes to the sound of the chords sounding a little bit dull and whatnot. But disregarding all those factors, I think that by the nature of the extended range with that just bleeds into the realm of the range of bass guitars or the bass player, the riff has to just limit itself to be executed in a more with the approach of a bass player, which is just only one note, a single note. You're not doing chords or whatsoever. If you're going to do chords and whatnot, it's going to be more towards the range where your originally your guitar is, the 6-string or the 7-string guitar is. And another thing is that it's not uncommon to listen to, in metal at least, to listen to some bands that will actually play chords in with 8-string guitars and whatnot, but they do it in a very with the purpose of sounding ugly and cacophonic and whatnot. And if you would like to listen to an example of that, I could recommend you like bands like Car Bomb or Ion Dissonance. Those two are very specific. Tony Danza Tap Dance Extravaganza will be another one. Very good, very, very cool band. Especially the fourth album, I think it is super good. Those will be very good examples of how you can, use that ugliness of the 8-string guitar doing chords, but to the premise of the music. You know what I mean? You're using them on purpose to make this sound more dissonant and cacophonic and whatnot. Okay, so to finalize my commentary, I just would like to mention a final thing, which is the ending of the track, the resolution of the song, which it has a resolution, a very interesting one, because I remember very specifically that when Doom Eternal was being made, Mick Gordon put an open call for musicians that were able to perform extreme vocals, you know, like the harsh screaming vocals around the world, to perform in the Doom Eternal original soundtrack. And I can hear in the ending of the track that it has these choirs, you know, these massive, super gnarly choirs of, you know, screams and whatnot, and harsh vocals. So I think that's the byproduct of that open call that Mick Gordon did, and that I think it was obviously very, very smart to do, because also I know that you know, there's a vocalist that performs with a band called Aborted, which is one of my death metal band that I like a lot, and he as a singer is, I think, is an incredible singer, and he was among the people that was casted to record those choirs for the game. So I think that was an incredibly creative approach towards building, you know, the zeitgeist and the mythos of the music of Doom itself, based, of course, of the premise of the game itself, that also have this insanely amazing legacy behind it, you know. So it's not like Mick Gordon lacked source material, you know what I mean? It's very easy, at least in my opinion, Doom is a very easy game to get inspired to, especially if you are already into metal music and whatnot, you know what I mean? It's like a blessing already to be able to do a soundtrack with such liberty and whatnot in that regard. So I think he did a wonderful job in this regard, obviously. So I think I'm gonna give this track, and I'm gonna give it an A tier. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like and share it with your friend. Also, please don't forget to visit my Patreon, my Ko-fi profile, and my Ko-fi store in case you want to support my work further, and my Teespring merch shop. And of course, ex nihilo nihil fit.